Today, we're finally going to talk about the test of high sorcery and how you can run it for the wizards in your party. Welcome, this is Dragonlance for 5th edition, and I am your host, Paul. We have a lot to do today, so let's get to it. But if you are new to this series, I call the Dragonlance for 5th edition. I probably should not have, because we actually talk about the original Dragonlance modules, a little bit of the 3.5 edition version of the modules, and how to run those for your player. If you're running in 5th edition, we're gonna give some ideas on how to translate that into 5th edition, but otherwise, it's kind of walking through these and giving some ideas on what worked for me, what didn't really work, and ways that we can kind of fill out the adventures. We're going chapter by chapter through the books, but today we're actually going to talk about something that is not in the original Dragonlance modules at all, but have become such an iconic part of the Dragonlance universe that you might want to run this adventure for the magic users of your party, and that is the test of high sorcery. I explained a little bit about the Towers of High Sorcery in a previous video here. I don't want to go into too much detail, but suffice it to say, before reaching level 5, magic users in Krynn are expected to go through this test, and that's so that the Towers of High Sorcery can kind of keep an eye on them and make sure that they know what they're doing before unleashing this very, very powerful magic onto the world. And you can become a renegade magic user, and that might cause other wizards to come try to capture you, to bring you in, or to convince you to come in, or if you resist, possibly kill you. That's kind of the overall thing of it. So this test can actually be anywhere, and I put it here in our walkthrough for a reason. And for those who are following our walkthrough the game, we just had the caravan fight, and we're going to Qualinesti. Now, the reason I put it here is for two reasons. The first one is my players actually started at level 1, and this is possibly the only way that you're actually going to be able to run this thing, unless you have somebody like, dual classing or something like that. Because if you start off with the characters that are in the book, like the character of Raistlin has already taken the test. And so if you do start the characters at level 1, or maybe they start taking some one of your characters start taking levels as a magic user, you might need this. But it needs to be taken before hitting level 5, and that is because at level 5 you get 3rd level spells, and those are the spells that the wizards are most concerned about, 3rd and above. All right, so as they're heading to Qualinesti, you are not actually terribly far from one of the towers, the Tower of Wayreth, and so there are a couple of different descriptions on how to actually get there. In some descriptions from the books, you are summoned and you walk over there, and by the way, the tower can only be found if you are invited. And you walk over there and you take the test and you leave. That is that takes quite a bit of time, because it's close, but it's not that close. So that takes quite a bit of time away from the adventure itself. The tower can also summon you magically, where you like fall asleep and you're in a field, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're in a forest right next to the tower. That's kind of how I did it. But before we get too far, just to let y'all know, I recorded this whole video before. It was 33 minutes long, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that to y'all. I'm going to split this into two. This video is going to be about what the books say about the test. In the second video we're going to do is the way I did it, because I added some stuff that I think is pretty darn cool. All right. So let's actually look at what the books say. Now, there are a plethora of Dragonlance resources out there. I have not read them all. I don't even have them all. I have a lot, but I don't have them all. And so, there very well may be like like some sort of adventure book that has just like a ton of stuff that I've just completely missed. If so, tell me about it and I'll track it down and we'll do a supplement video on it. I've hit the books where I think that there's going to be information, and that's what I'm going off of. So, in our original Advanced Dungeons & Dragons world, in 1st and 2nd edition, we have Dragonlance Adventures. Now, this book is on DriveThruRPG. It's not for a lot of money. I think it's like $5-6. It is really, really good resource. It is a lot of just the technical stuff about running things in Dragonlance. From how to create a Kinder, or a gnome in Krynn, to what are the Knights of Solamnia like? How are they structured? What are their levels? The different ways that magic users level based on their school and their the moon that they follow. Because there's different ways they advance, and which is really, really cool. This has a lot of information. I have gotten just tons of great information from this book. It is fairly limited on what it says about the test. 3.5 edition has a much bigger book on this topic in particular, Towers of High Sorcery. This is a much more expensive book on DriveThruRPG. It is a very cool book. It is very, very limited. And I tell you what, if you are just running the base modules, and you're just looking to have, you're just kind of looking to have like a one session adventure, taking the test, and that's it, this might not be the book for you. If you are running more of a mage-focused campaign that really deals with the towers and what they do, which would be actually a really fun and cool campaign, this is great. It has so much really, really great information in it. I just if you're running the games like I'm running them, Dragonlance Adventures is going to be much, much more worth your time. So let's look at what the Dragonlance Adventures actually says. And that's pretty much it. All right. So here's the thing about the test. It is designed for the individual. And so there isn't a just an outline of the way this is supposed to go. There's certain goals that you as the dungeon master are going for. But there's a lot of things that you can play with there to really customize it for your player. So the things that it should have in it, according to this, is 3 tests of wizard's knowledge of magic and its use, require the casting of all the spells known to the initiate, 3 tests that cannot be solved by magic alone, and at least 1 combat against a character known as an ally to the initiate, and at least 1 solo combat against an opponent who is 2 levels higher than the initiate. Okay, so that's going to give our framework. And by the way, 3.5 does not really change this. It adds stuff about like, encouraging the dungeon master to kind of, play with the character's fears. If there's fears of spiders, then do spiders, something like that. And so but this is kind of the framework that we're working for. Okay, so there's narrative ways that we can do that, and then there's just kind of plain stuff that we can do that. I prefer kind of a narrative way, and that's kind of the way the novels make it seem. So before we leave here, next paragraph, those attempting the test can bring companions along, but no one who comes is guaranteed of returning alive. All right, so this is a way you can run this as a party, is the point here. Let's talk about the books, the novels. All right, so I found at least two depictions of the test itself. The one is a Margaret Weiss short story that is in The Magic of Krynn, the first Tales edition, and I got to tell you, it's kind of garbage. I loves me some Margaret Weiss. Wait, don't jump on me yet. We're gonna praise her in just a minute. But the story is kind of garbage. It says almost nothing about the test itself. It goes way too fast. It jumps to the very end of the test. It actually jumps a little bit of a spoiler, but not a lot of one. It actually jumps to when Raistlin has finished the test, and it has the confrontation with Caramon in it, but you learn later that he actually already finished the test before that confrontation happens. Margaret Weiss expanded that in The Soul Forge. And that's a much, much better book. It's a much, much better story. It's much better writing, and it gives a lot more detail. Now, it adds an element in here that 3.5 picks up on that I think is very, very interesting. And in the Soul Forge, Raistlin does not know that this is a test until he is told by a being that's not part of the test. And 3.5 actually hits on this, that the illusion, you go into the forest to take this test, but it is filled with these intense illusions, and the illusions are so great that the initiate does not actually realize that he or she is taking this test right now, which is really, really cool. And if you have good role players in your party, you really want to play that up. Now, most of Margaret Weiss's depiction of the test in Soul Forge is centered around Raistlin's meeting with Fistandantilus, which is not part of the test. It is not intended to be there at all. Now that's hugely important plot wise, but it's not. And unless you're actually doing that to your player, which would be a really cool way of doing it. I did a video. I'll put that one up here as well. I did a video of how I'm using the character of Fistandantilus to kind of mess with my party. And so if you're inclined to do that, this is another way to do it. And so check out that book. It's got a pretty cool depiction of that. But the rest of what is written is a depiction of part of the test. And so you can kind of use those as your guide. This should be a narrative thing. It's not a thing where they say, and now cast Magic Missile, and now cast Featherfall. No, use the test to force the casting of the spell, If your wizard knows Featherfall, then the wizard gets to a cliff and can't get down without it. Forces him to cast the spell. And so that's kind of a way to kind of approach that. So 3.5 gets to those same elements. All right. So 3 tests of magic, 3 tests that are not at all, the solution is not in magic. So a puzzle of some sort, a confrontation with someone known to be an ally. In Raistlin's case, it was Caramon, and the outcome of that, famously solidified their cordial relationship for many years to come. And then a duel, and so the 3.5 edition has this kind of cool little flow chart. Now like Margaret Weis's version, and like is suggested in the first and second edition version, the duel really should be the climax of here. This is where you're leaving it all on the table. This flowchart is pretty interesting on kind of the ways these things can go. Now, I wouldn't suggest using this as like an absolute guide. Like, you're at the start, you have 3 exits. One's to the, south and then east and west. The reason I don't actually suggest that is because you can walk through this flowchart and hit a magic test once or 6 times or anywhere in between. You can hit magic test 6 times, which means that the DM in prepping this is going to have to think of 6 different tests. Remember, none of these books have an outline of the actual test. And so you're going to have to think of 6 different tests, and then your party might only do one of them. No, we should really think of this as just kind of, just in general, a way that these things can flow. In this one, you have the magic. These are just strictly magic tests. The part that says tasks, or hazards are just different situations that perhaps a trap that you need your cunning to get through in the case of a hazard. Some sort of test that you have to do. I would frame all of these things in narrative form, but a task that might be helped with magic or clever thinking, these sort of things. Rest is a safe place that they can rest. Especially if you're going to do something that's longer, you definitely want them to be able to rest and regain spell slots along the way, because once you get to a duel, it's one-on-one at that point. If the companions came through, they need to step aside and let this thing finish out. And, if you've burned all your magic, and you're in there, it's like, okay, now I'm going to throw darts at you. Meh. That's going to be rough. And so it's just kind of a way to structure it. I definitely took the path of, that this is kind of a straight path from start to finish with different obstacles along the way, whether they be battles, places that required some sort of magical feat, places, some sort of trap that required some thinking to get through, or that sort of thing. Even at my rest stops, I added some moral component to them. By the way, I actually, it will get more into why I did this, but I didn't actually do the confrontation with an ally. Instead I put in several different moral situations where the wizard could, either help someone else, help herself, or something in between. Keep in mind that, and this is played out in Margaret Weis's writings, the player's behavior in the test is what robe they're going to be offered at the end, and in my case, my good aligned wizard ended up with a black robe at the end, because that's how she played it. And that was what was offered to her. And that's one of those times where you kind of have a conversation about alignment. That requires some planning. And also, don't get it confused. We need to have an understanding of what alignment means in Dragonlance, because it's different than Dungeons and Dragons as a whole. Evil in Dragonlance means you're looking out for yourself. It doesn't mean that you're prone to kill people or anything like that. You might not be, might not be prone to torture at all, but you're looking out for yourself. Whereas good means you're looking out for others. And neutral actually means you're striving for a balance. And so, these are the kind of moral decisions that you should be setting up in here, not whether you're going to stab someone in the back, but instead, are you going to take, are you going to steal this spell scroll because it gives you an advantage later? Or do you let that NPC have it because you know the NPC needs it? That's the sort of question that we're asking here. And that is what the confrontation with the ally becomes. How are you going to react to that? When, are you going to look out for that character's best interest? Or are you going to look out for your own best interest? And that's where the robes come in later. All right. So, there's a ton here. So the last thing that 3.5 adds that I really, really like is a difficulty setting. This is pretty cool. And so much of this, I'm just going to have to refer you either to your own imagination or to the books. There's a lot more information about the structure of the towers themselves. We really don't have time to get into all of that. That's in the books. That's in Dragonlance Adventures and in the Towers of High Sorceries, in both of them. The 3.5 edition adds this element of difficulty. And so each time the player reaches a trial of some sort, they say in advance how, like on a scale, how difficult do you want it? So if it's a fight, you just add more bad guys, that sort of thing. And you get treasure for completing this test. And by the way, the test should be deadly. It should be deadly. And if you're going in higher difficulty, it should be deadly. Even at the lowest difficulty, it should be deadly. But you get treasure at the end, and you kind of count up how difficult you went through, and that's the cool prize that you get at the end. And DMs can kind of set their own scale if you don't want to buy the book on that. But the highest level difficulty is a Soul Forge. It is, if you go through basically the top difficulty in every challenge, then you're going to come out of it like Raistlin did. You're going to come out of it with some sort, that you've essentially been crushed physically. So you're going to lose, lose some physical ability, whether it's kind of always being sickly like Raistlin was, or something else that the DM can decide on. But you are extraordinarily powerful. And this is where I really would like you get extra spell slots. You get, stat, like maybe your strength and dex stats decrease, but your intelligence and wisdom stats shoot up, where you are seriously able to wreck shop at that point, assuming that you can physically make it to the battle. And so that's kind of the element they have there. That would be, if a wizard wants to go through a Soul Forge, I think that would be a blast to run. The wizard should understand that there's chances are you're going to die. Chances are great that you are going to die. That should be very, very difficult to survive. But I think it's a really cool element. All right. So that's kind of what the books say about the tests themselves. As I was saying, there's a lot more information about the towers and stuff like that. But if you're just wanting to run the test, have them go to the tower, be greeted by some people, go through the test. If they survive, offer them one or two of the robes. See what they pick. In the next video, I'm going to tell you what I did in the test, because I added some stuff that I think is pretty fun. And so please do hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell icon that's going to tell you when I upload the next video. And while you're down there, give a thumbs up and a comment down below. That really does help the algorithms in drawing people here.